It's no secret that Naruto is by far and away the most powerful Hokage of all time. But he wasn't always the strongest. See, it was a long journey of a million steps that slowly but surely built up Naruto's strength to the level that when he eventually did become the Hokage, he could be crowned as the truly strongest Hokage ever. However, have you ever asked yourself the question, which one of those million tiny little steps was the individual step that propelled Naruto past all his predecessors? Well, today we're going to be going through all of the Hokages, from weakest all the way up to the strongest, not including Naruto, and talking about when in Naruto's story he surpassed each and every one of those ascendingly strong previous Hokage. Because today, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking when Naruto surpassed all the Hokage. But before we get to talking about our main character being stronger than everybody else in the universe, guys, please, a light tap for me. Like the video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional NC Hammer 23 video every single week, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. We're on to the one-on-one fights, and Shino is fighting against Zaku. This one doesn't know how to find mom's nipples, so we now have to feed him formula. Any and all people joining the fourth wall would be appreciated. But before we get into all that today, I want to talk to you about our favorite recurring sponsor to the page, HelloFresh. HelloFresh wants you to know that they are now better than ever. See, because while HelloFresh has always prided themselves on allowing you to skip the grocery store and delivering seasonal and delicious ingredients to your doorstep every single week, they have now doubled their menu size. And if that level of variancy isn't enough for you, they also allow you to swap out the proteins and veggies that come in every single meal for all my picky eaters out there. On top of that, HelloFresh wants to make sure that when you're done cooking their recipes, you're full, which is why they've increased their portion sizes. They've also made a commitment to adding more veggies into their recipes. On top of that, they want to make sure that you're really getting any protein you want at no additional cost, which is why you can now add seafood and premium steak at no additional cost to your existing recipes. Some nights we don't even have the time to cook a meal for ourselves, which is why HelloFresh now has the option to provide heat and eat meals that are ready in just 3 minutes. But there's a big difference between telling and showing, so let's head down to the kitchen and cook ourselves up a little dinner. For those of you afraid making HelloFresh meals is going to take too much time, they always have options that allow for you to get done cooking and get to eating real quick.
All you have to prep is your ginger, your garlic, and then split up your greens and your whites of your scallions. I also have to cut these wonton papers into quarters. Cook up the pork in the provided sesame oil. Add in the garlic, ginger, whites of the scallions, and some carrots. We then add 5 cups of water and all the stock concentrates that were provided and let it boil. We then drop in our wonton triangles, one-ish at a time. We added in some bok choy. We sprinkle in some green onions for additional flavor. Sprinkle on some wonton crisps here for a little bit of crunch.
All that's left now is to dig in. So hot, but delicious. So what are you waiting for? Take advantage of the new HelloFresh by using my code NCHammer23FM at HelloFresh.com for 10 free meals, plus free breakfast for life. 1 free meal per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as a discount on the first box. New or returning subscribers only, varies by plan. Sign up today. Click the link in my description below or use code NCHammer23FM at HelloFresh.com. Now, before we dive into what is going to be a pretty long video here, I want to set up one distinction. We're going to be talking about when Naruto surpassed the Hokage forms of all the previous Hokage. This is an important distinction on account of the fact that people like Minato and Kakashi reach the peak of their strengths either way after they've been the Hokage or way before they become the Hokage. However, because I know all of you are going to be curious about when Naruto surpasses the peak strength of all the previous Hokage, we'll also be talking about that. But the video is going to be going from weakest Hokage in their Hokage form to strongest Hokage in their Hokage form, not peak strengths. And with that out of the way, let's dive directly into our list, starting with the weakest ever Hokage, which is rather unfortunately Tsunade. See, Tsunade, the 5th Hokage, is unfortunately pretty by far and away the weakest Hokage ever. And that's not because Tsunade herself is weak. Tsunade is ridiculously strong. She's one of the legendary Sannin for a reason. And if it weren't for the ridiculous upscaling of all Naruto characters, not only in the light novels, but also in Boruto, she wouldn't be the weakest Hokage ever, because fundamentally her feats are actually a lot more impressive than some other Hokage on this list in terms of what she accomplished in certain fights and what it meant for the village. But unfortunately for Tsunade, unfortunately unfortunately for the Hokage who came after, doing something even remotely impressive against some late-stage enemies in Boruto or the light novels pretty immediately makes you one of the most powerful Hokage of all time. See, because while Hokage Kakashi and especially Hokage Shikamaru may seem weaker than Tsunade, they both pulled off what could be identified as relatively insane feats in either the light novels or in Boruto. Insane feats that put them somewhere in the region of planet-level APs and FTL plus speeds. No, I'm not kidding. And thus Tsunade is where we start this list, and thus we have to ask the question, when did Naruto surpass Tsunade's Hokage strength? And the answer is not only unfortunately pretty early in Naruto's story, but also pretty clear-cut, because Naruto surpasses Tsunade's Hokage strength the second he unlocks Toad Sage Mode. And this is a verifiable claim through a myriad of different ways. The second that Naruto acquires Toad Sage Mode, Shikaku Nara, who at that moment in time was by far and away the most intelligent person inside of Konoha, said that Naruto was now on a different level than every other shinobi in Konoha, including Tsunade. And that claim is immediately backed up by the fact that the entirety of Konoha fighting against Nagato was not enough to battle him back, but Naruto in his Toad Sage Mode was able to defeat all 6 paths of pain and Nagato. Tsunade herself, while the Hokage, comes face to face with pain and doesn't stand a chance. And while Tsunade does have a couple of rather impressive feats in her battle against Madara when the 5 Kages fought against Edo Madara at the beginning of the 4th Great Shinobi World War, she was not only fighting alongside 4 other Kage, but also the second that Madara got serious using his perfect Susanoo, the fight was over. And quite honestly, when you think about all of the things that Naruto unlocked the second he acquired Toad Sage Mode, perfect Toad Sage Mode mind you, the idea of him being able to pass Tsunade makes a fair amount of sense. But I mean, the second that Naruto was able to master Toad Sage Mode, he not only increased his strength, his speed, his reflexes, but he also gained access to abilities like Froggy Kumite, the summoning of Ma and Pa, and therefore by extension, the demonic Toad confrontation chant, a sound-based genjutsu so ridiculously powerful that Jiraiya was able to use it to kill half the paths of pain. And here's the thing, Naruto uses just his Sage Mode form for a whole lot more battles than just his battle against the paths of pain and Nagato. See, not only was Naruto, with the use of Sage Mode, able to accomplish something that the entire fighting force of Konoha working together was unable to accomplish, but he was also able to battle against Kurama one-on-one without the assistance of Kurama's chakra and beat Kurama back. On top of this, using just his Sage Mode, he was also able to defeat the 3rd Raikage, deflecting his lightning spear into his own shoulder. And considering the fact that the 3rd Raikage was known as the perfect shield of the cloud and was undoubtedly more powerful than the 4th Raikage, on account of the fact that the 4th Raikage was once able to 1v1 Gyuki to a draw, something that the 4th Raikage cannot claim to have done, and you consider the fact that the 4th Raikage was established to be stronger than Tsunade using his nintaijutsu in their arm wrestling match, then if Naruto was able to defeat a Raikage who was stronger than the Raikage who was established to be stronger than Tsunade, then it's fair to assume that Naruto is stronger than Tsunade. And if we assume that the 3rd Raikage is as powerful as Gyuki and Naruto was able to defeat him, then that means that Naruto in his Sage Mode is not only as powerful as Kurama, but also is as powerful as Gyuki and is realistically probably stronger than both of them. A claim that we cannot make for Tsunade, and also a claim that we cannot make for the next Hokage on this list, because the next Hokage on this list is Hiruzen, who unfortunately was also passed in strength the second Naruto accessed Sage Mode. See, while what Hiruzen's peak in terms of strength looked like is one of the biggest mysteries in the Naruto universe, we do know that a substantially non-peak Hiruzen at 68 years old was able to battle against Hashirama, Tobirama, and Orochimaru all simultaneously, and technically come out victorious. Because while yes, you could establish this fight as a tie, or maybe even a victory for Orochimaru, who just loses their arms and doesn't even really do that, the win state for Hiruzen in this fight was Orochimaru being unable to destroy Konoha, something that Hiruzen does accomplish. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Hiruzen was fighting against a prime version of Hashirama or Tobirama. He wasn't. That's established. Orochimaru's way of using Edo Tensei at that moment in time was to control the bodies they brought back to life, rather than going about Edo Tensei in the way that Kabuto goes about it, which is bringing back a bunch of people and then giving them a simple directive and allowing them to control their own bodies because they know how their abilities work better than anyone. On top of this, Orochimaru would not be able to maintain or control the full power of Hashirama or Tobirama, and so on the surface, Hiruzen battling against Tobirama, Hashirama, and Orochimaru all simultaneously, and kind of winning seems ridiculously impressive, and it is objectively ridiculously impressive. It's not as impressive as it could be, but still, Hiruzen was known as the Professor, a man who had mastered every single jutsu of the leaf, minus Flying Raijin. He guided Konoha through 3 Great Shinobi World Wars and fought in the 4th one. Every single war the Shinobi world has ever fought, Hiruzen has been in. Not to mention, on the night of Naruto's birth, he was able to use his Monkey King Enma staff to push Kurama out of Konoha, and during the 4th Great Shinobi World War, he was 1/4 of the people responsible for creating a barrier seal that was able to hold the 10 tails. But if we assume that a Prime Hiruzen is somewhere in the region of a pre-perfected Edo Tensei Orochimaru, that is to say that Prime Hiruzen either would have been able to rip out all of Orochimaru's soul using Reaper Death Seal, or maybe wouldn't have even needed to use Reaper Death Seal in the battle against Orochimaru and simply would have dispatched of them, then that gives us a pretty good image of what Prime Hiruzen's strength looks like, at least comparatively to everyone else's. Because if we're assuming that is how powerful a Prime Hiruzen is, then we can kind of use Orochimaru as a watermark. And if we're looking at Part 1 Orochimaru as the example of how strong Prime Hiruzen was, well, we know that Part 1 Orochimaru, while a member of the Akatsuki, launched a surprise attack on Itachi, trying to take over his body, and Itachi was able to reverse Orochimaru's living corpse reanimation jutsu back onto him using his Sharingan. Orochimaru literally had to break one of their own fingers to break out of the Genjutsu and slither away from Itachi. So if we're assuming that Prime Hiruzen's power is somewhere in the region of Part 1 Orochimaru's strength, then we also have to assume that Prime Hiruzen wouldn't be able to defeat Akatsuki Itachi in a fight. And while a lot of you out there have a delusional thought that Akatsuki Itachi would be able to defeat Nagato in a fight, that is not the case. And since Sage Mode Naruto was able to defeat Nagato, if we're assuming that a Prime Hiruzen couldn't defeat Itachi, who couldn't defeat Prime Nagato, well then yes, Naruto surpassed Hokage Hiruzen even at the peak of his strength the second he awoke to Sage Mode. With that said, the next entry on our list is a bit of a contentious one. See, I know I established in the beginning of the video that Shikamaru and Kakashi were going to be a bit higher than you anticipated, and honestly placing the Hokage form of either of them over not only a Prime Hiruzen but also Tsunade does not feel right in my soul. However, fortunately, at least for one of them, their long run of not being placed on this list ends here. Because the 6th most powerful Hokage of all time, Naruto included, there's 8, is Shikamaru. Now, for those of you who have followed the page for a while or even read the light novels yourself, you'll note that this idea of a Hokage Shikamaru possibly being stronger than Hokage Hiruzen or Tsunade sounds kind of insane. And that's because in Shikamaru's 2nd light novel, after spazzing out at all of the Gokage and grabbing them all with a shadow paralysis jutsu, threatening to kill them if they try to back the hidden stone in their warmongering ways, a little bit later in that light novel, Shikamaru, while out on a walk, infuriated with himself, tries to use his shadow strangle on a tree. And while one would assume that if Shikamaru was able to hold down all the Gokage simultaneously with his shadow paralysis, that he would decimate a tree with shadow strangle, while he tries with all his might to destroy this tree, it just creaks, implying that Shikamaru's AP with his shadow strangle isn't even tree level. Now in this moment, Shikamaru realizes that he's let himself go ever since he became a politician, which is basically immediately after the 4th Great Shinobi World War. A shiver runs down his spine as he thinks about what possibly could have happened if he did actually try to kill the Gokage, none of whom could be choked out with a below tree level strangle. But some of you are probably asking the question right now, but Nick, if Shikamaru's not even tree level, then how is he stronger than Hiruzen or Tsunade? Well, that's because his scaling is wildly inconsistent. See, if you separate Shadow Paralysis from Shadow Strangle, then technically his scaling does get a bit more consistent, but there's really no reason to do that. And we've seen Shikamaru, while the aide to Naruto, and therefore most likely exactly as powerful as he is as Hokage Shikamaru, pull off some ridiculous feats with his Shadow Paralysis, like halting the movements of an upgraded Kamamarking Kawaki as he tries to kill Boruto in chapter 78 of Boruto. And even though Kawaki hadn't fully awoken to all of the powers of Ishiki and all of the strength and experience of Ishiki with this new karma marking that Amado had given him, Kawaki was being shown as equal in strength to a karma mark wielding Boruto in this fight. And while Shikamaru in his arrest of the karma mark wielding Kawaki was assisted by things like Mitsuki holding Kawaki's karma marking hand and Sasuke flying in and holding a sword to Kawaki's neck, the fact of the matter is that Shikamaru was able to stop the movements of a karma mark wielding Kawaki, who should for all intents and purposes be comparable to people like Ishiki, considering the fact that Kawaki was tapping into the strength, experience, and abilities of Ishiki in this fight. Now, obviously, we know that Amado placed limiters on this karma marking to make sure that Kawaki wasn't throwing himself into battles that he couldn't win. And we also know that Kawaki hadn't fully awoken to the powers of this karma marking yet, based off the amount of spokes that we saw in his Dharma Wheel Dojutsu. But that's not the only time that Shikamaru has done something relatively insane with his shadow paralysis as an adult. As we also see in Boruto's literal first arc, the versus Momoshiki arc, that Shikamaru was able to arrest Kinshiki mid-axe swing at Naruto, halting Kinshiki's movements entirely. Which means that not only was Shikamaru able to react to the movements of Kinshiki and make counter moves to move faster than Kinshiki to stop him before he was able to injure Naruto, but also that his strength with shadow paralysis was able to halt the movements of a Kinshiki moving with killing intent. And as Kinshiki is only comparable to other Otsutskis and people like Jubidara or Jubito, the fact that Shikamaru was able to arrest the movements of Kinshiki could very easily put his AP in the region of planet level. Tie all that into the fact that Shikamaru was shown to be able to track the movements of Kinshiki and stop him before he was able to complete his swing, dodge a kick from Delta, who is well known to be a light speed opponent, and capture all of the Hokage in a shadow paralysis, even though Naruto and Gaara were able to break out of it, after Naruto identified that Shikamaru was about to make a move and wanted to stop him but was unable to because Shikamaru attacked too quickly. So yes, while it was technically a surprise feat, it was a surprise feat that Naruto saw coming. However, Shikamaru attacked with such speed that even though Naruto understood that he was about to attack and wanted to move to stop him, Naruto could not. And if you're able to get an attack off on Naruto, who understands that you're about to attack before Naruto's able to do anything about that, well then yeah, you're an FTL plus level threat. And if that sounds insane, it's because, well yeah, it is. But that's just Boruto and the light novels. That's the new generation. If you do anything to anyone important, you are an FTL minimum level speed threat and a country level minimum level AP threat. But Nick, what do you weigh more heavily here? The fact that Shikamaru was able to halt the movements of Kinshiki and Kawaki, who was using the karma marking, or the fact that he wasn't able to break a tree he really wanted to break? Well, honestly, I don't know, so I'm just going to defer to the consensus. And the consensus is that adult Shikamaru is country level plus. He can be upscaled, he can be downscaled. You have infinite possibilities to make whatever narrative you possibly want about Shikamaru based on how much you like him. But it is a verifiable fact based off multiple different feats that adult Shikamaru, and therefore Hokage Shikamaru, is FTL plus. But that makes the idea of explaining when Naruto surpasses Shikamaru a little bit difficult, because Hokage Naruto is somewhere in the region of FTL plus to massively FTL, implying that at peak power, Naruto and Shikamaru's speeds are somewhat equal, and as crazy as it sounds, we kind of have evidence to back up that claim. Oh, earlier when I said that the consensus for Shikamaru's AP was country plus, I lied. It's city plus. But therein lies the problem, because Naruto's AP has been city level plus since the time skip, not even since Sage Mode. The fact that Kakashi identified post-time skip that he needed to use his Sharingan in the battle against Sakura and Naruto when they were redoing the bell test implies that just a post-time skip Naruto was at least city level plus. And therefore, what is it? Are Naruto and Shikamaru equal as adults, or did Shikamaru get surpassed by Naruto the second that Naruto turned 15? Well, I believe that the answer is a bit more nuanced than that, as I believe that the best possible answer to explain when Hokage Shikamaru was passed by Naruto in terms of strength is the same as with Hiruzen and Tsunade, the second he unlocked Sage Mode. Because when Naruto unlocks Sage Mode, he becomes sub-relativistic, which means he's close to the speed of light, but not quite there yet. And if we're saying that Hokage Shikamaru's AP is somewhere in the region of City Plus, well, Naruto's Sage Mode AP is somewhere between Country and Country Plus level, and therefore the relatively massive difference in their AP would make up for the fact that Shikamaru would verifiably be much faster than Sage Mode Naruto. But if you want to make the argument that technically Hokage Naruto as an adult never surpasses the strength of Hokage Shikamaru, well, that is an argument that could be made. But with that controversial pick out of the way, next up on the list is Naruto's dad, Minato, who Naruto obviously doesn't pass in strength by awakening to Sage Mode because he also was a perfect Toad Sage, who also, like Naruto, used the giant Rasengan to defeat Kurama while he was sealed inside of an Uzumaki. And Minato technically accomplished it at a younger age. Now, he was being helped by Kushina and her adamantite chain, so he was probably fighting a weaker version of Kurama than Naruto had to fight against, but Naruto is also only fighting against half of Kurama. Minato is fighting against the entirety of Kurama. So there's also an argument to be made that Minato fought against a stronger version of Kurama using, well, I guess I don't think he actually uses Sage Mode in that battle in his one-shot, but still, Minato and Naruto's feats are almost inseparable from each other. But this isn't the only time that Minato fights against Kurama, because Minato also fights against the entirety of Kurama on the night of Naruto's birth, and he does it after defeating Yellow Mask Obito. And while that fight isn't crazy long, it did require for Minato to use the Flying Raijin a couple of times, which we know is an incredibly chakra-depletive jutsu. And immediately after defeating Yellow Mask Obito, Minato goes on to technically tie against Kurama, because while the result of this fight is his and Kushina's deaths, he's able to seal half of Kurama into himself and the other half into Naruto, which is something that he believed he needed to do because he believed that Naruto was the child of prophecy that Jiraiya had told him about. Now, in this fight, once again, Kurama was being weakened by Kushina's adamantite chains. How weakened, we can't say, on account of the fact that Kushina had just had Kurama ripped out of her. But if we're assuming that Hokage Minato is equal to Kurama in strength, because after all, we are establishing that their fight was a tie, then it stands to reason that the second that Naruto got stronger than the entirety of Kurama, that's when he surpassed his father while he was a Hokage, which is an important distinction with Minato on account of the fact that his peak strength is well after he's done being Hokage. But at what point did Naruto become stronger than the entirety of Kurama? Well, it's hard to say. See, because here's the thing. You could absolutely say that KCM1 is the moment that Naruto surpasses Minato. That's probably what I would say, because it's established time time and time again that a perfect Jinchuriki is always going to be greater than the sum of its parts. And therefore, while KCM1 isn't necessarily the most perfect that Minato and Kurama's fusions ever get, as obviously they go on to establish things like KCM2, KCM2 plus Sage Mode, so on and so forth, KCM1 is Naruto accessing Kurama's chakra in a somewhat agreement type way. While the timing of Naruto being able to use KCM1 is limited on account of the fact that it opens up a door for Kurama to take over his body, still in these moments with the unlocking of KCM1, Naruto is able to do some things that probably the entirety of Kurama could not, like battling against White Mask Obito on somewhat even footing, and battling against Edo Nagato on somewhat even footing. Obviously, in both of these fights, Naruto is assisted by a myriad of ridiculously powerful people, like in the Edo Nagato fight when he's fighting alongside Edo Itachi and Killer Bee, or in the White Mask Obito fight where he's fighting alongside Might Guy and Kakashi. But still, Obito and Nagato are two people that have individually either controlled or fought against Kurama and came out victorious. So the fact that Naruto in KCM1 was able to battle against technically stronger iterations of Nagato and Obito than the iterations that fought against Kurama seems to me to imply that KCM1 Naruto is stronger than the entirety of Kurama. And thus it's when Naruto unlocks KCM1 that he surpasses what his father's power level was while he was still alive as Hokage. Now, as to when Naruto surpassed Minato's peak, that's a different question, on account of the fact that Minato's peak happens during the 4th Great Shinobi World War, and Minato just kind of becomes Naruto, but older, as Minato is established to not only be a perfect Toad Sage, but also to have a KCM2 form, with the other half of Kurama that he sealed inside of himself. So when does Naruto pass in strength essentially a copy of himself? Well, it's when he gets an upgrade that the copy of himself does not get, which is when Naruto gets Sage of Six Paths Chakra. And listen, I know, it could be argued that KCM2 Naruto is stronger than KCM2 Minato, because it's established that Naruto is better at controlling Kurama's chakra than Minato is. However, Minato has Flying Raijin, and Naruto doesn't. And Minato is so wildly proficient with that Flying Raijin that he's able to teleport the majority of the Shinobi Alliance out of a seal with the Ten Tails, because the Ten Tails was about to explode everything inside that seal. So while Naruto is also pretty fast, and some would even say almost Flying Raijin level fast, he's not Minato's Flying Raijin level fast. But anyways, that's enough about Minato. Let's move on to our next entry on the list, which is Tobirama. Yes, Hokage Tobirama is stronger than Hokage Minato. Now, is Tobirama's peak as high as Minato's peak? No, but he didn't get reincarnated with a bunch of new abilities. See, Tobirama died somewhere near seemingly the peak of his strength, and the Hokage, when brought back by Orochimaru at the beginning of the 4th Great Shinobi World War, were said to be brought back at close to their peak strengths, and therefore what we got from Tobirama during the 4th Great Shinobi World War is probably what you would get from Tobirama during his heyday. And therefore, when Tobirama is brought back using Edo Tensei and immediately strikes fear into not only Orochimaru, but also EMS Sasuke by holding one and just one finger alone up, Tobirama is immediately established as equal to or greater than Orochimaru and EMS Sasuke. And this comparison is immediately verified when Tobirama's tandem paper bomb jutsu, the one that has an Edo Tensei reincarnation perpetually exploding, is able to destroy one of Hashirama's god deity gates. Now, these gates are one of the most powerful jutsus in the entirety of Naruto, as they've been shown to hold down things like Jubito, Edo Tensei Madara with the Rinnegan, and even the Ten Tails. And yet, Tobirama's tandem paper bomb jutsu was able to destroy one of those gates. Gates that, mind you, were able to withstand a full-powered tailed beast ball from the Ten Tails. And thus, if Tobirama was able to destroy something that a tailed beast ball from the Ten Tails could not destroy, that means that Tobirama's tandem paper bomb jutsu is at least a country-level attack, and Naruto does not gain that level of power until KCM2. But it is at that moment exactly that Naruto surpasses Tobirama in his Hokage form. Now, for those of you keeping track at home, there are still two names on this list. One that I would identify as controversial, and the other which is widely agreed upon. However, fortunately for me, in my comments, the first name up on that list is the controversial one, and that would be none other than Hokage Kakashi. Yes, I am saying that Hokage Kakashi, the guy with no Sharingan, is stronger than Hiruzen, Tsunade, Shikamaru, Minato, and Tobirama. I am not talking about DMS Kakashi, which means no Kamui, no extrasensory perception, and therefore no Raikiri, no copying ability, and maybe more importantly than anything, no Susanoo. Now, mind you, with all of that, in his DMS form, he is a planet-level threat with FTL plus speeds, who's able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Kaguya. His Kamui Raikiri is able to transcend conventional durability, because anything hit by his Raikiri is immediately transported to the Kamui dimension, ripping it off somebody's body, and his perfect Susanoo can throw shuriken the size of school buses that do the same thing. But Nick, didn't Kakashi take a massive step back after the 4th Great Shinobi World War? Well, like, Kind of. And then he didn't. See, because, well, yes, losing the Sharingan caused for Kakashi to lose access to a myriad of ridiculously broken abilities. Losing the Sharingan also led to Kakashi losing a massive chakra drain that had affected his chakra reserves his entire life. See, Kakashi has one of the biggest chakra pools in all of Naruto. Top 5. Easily. And considering the fact that he's known as Kakashi, the copy ninja with access to over 1,000 jutsus, he didn't lose access to any of those jutsus once he lost his Sharingan, as we've seen people like Sasuke use taijutsu or genjutsu that they copied when their Sharingan was previously activated without activating their Sharingan. And thus, when Kakashi did lose his Sharingan, he lost the ability to copy new jutsus that could possibly come his way. He did not lose access to the thousands of jutsus he had already copied. And now, without the chakra drain of his Sharingan, he's able to use those jutsus at a volume never yet seen before. Kakashi in his light novels has surrounded an entire village with a quartz-lined mud wall to make it impervious to lightning cannons that were raining down on it for 12 full hours. He's created a fire release jutsu so ridiculously powerful it was able to extinguish an infinite water source created by Hagoromo. And his purple lightning is essentially the Raikiri upgraded, in that it can do everything that the Raikiri, the Chidori, can do, but it doesn't give him tunnel vision. On top of this, his light novel tells us that after the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, he spent years training himself, and therefore now he is leaps and bounds, their words, not mine, stronger than he was in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War. Now, they're not talking about his DMS form, but they are talking about him in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, one Kamui Kakashi, the guy who was like 30% successful in literally ripping the Ten Tails head clean off its shoulders, the person who was able to 1v1 Obito to a standstill. But more importantly than any of that, Kakashi, after being Hokage, was shown to be able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Kashin Koji, and while he was technically fighting a shadow clone, he was able to injure that shadow clone, causing it to explode. Kashin Koji was able to kill Jigen. Now, like a 10% powered Jigen, Kashin Koji was also able to temporarily go toe-to-toe with the likes of Ishiki. So the fact that Kakashi was able to go toe-to-toe with even a shadow clone of Kashin Koji, who is verifiably a planet buster with FTL plus speeds, means that Naruto did not surpass Hokage Kakashi until at least he accessed Sage of Six Paths chakra from Hagoromo. See, Naruto ends his story, or at least his manga, somewhere in the region of a continent level AP. Now, over the blank period, things like Naruto the Last come out, and we see Naruto tank an attack that literally splits the moon in half and destroy the Tenseigan, which is able to maintain an artificial sun for thousands of years, and therefore it's not really until the last that Naruto starts pulling off planet level feats. So if you want a real actual timestamp for when Naruto surpassed Hokage Kakashi, it's probably the last. Though obviously on account of the fact that Sage of Six Paths Naruto was stronger than DMS Kakashi, and DMS Kakashi is verifiably the peak of Kakashi's power, and the more accurate argument would probably be when Naruto gains access to Sage of Six Paths chakra from Hagoromo. This is also maybe where Naruto surpasses the last entry on our list, Hashirama, the unanimously agreed upon second strongest Hokage of all time. But why do I say maybe? Well, that's because Hashirama is like absurdly strong. Edo Hashirama, who was not at full strength, was able to, in a one-on-one battle, defeat an Edo Madara who was given a perfect body and dual Rinnegan. On top of this, well, technically it wasn't until the end of Madara and Hashirama's battle and their Edo Tensei forms that Madara gained access to Hashirama Sage Mode. Madara, for the entirety of that fight, absolutely had access to Hashirama's cells, which would increase his power, speed, regeneration, and chakra pool. And yet, in a straight-up 1v1, Hashirama was able to pin down Madara using his god deity gates, and while he didn't look great by the end of it either, pin-cushioned with chakra rods, if it weren't for Obito being forced to use Rinne Rebirth, Madara was done right then and there. And therefore, like, well, technically, Madara wins the fight. The fact that Hashirama was able to force Madara into a situation where he was about to be sealed, and it was only some external factor that stopped him from being sealed, means in my book, Hashirama won. And I know what some of you are gonna say, Six Paths Mode Naruto was able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Jubidara, who is undoubtedly stronger than just Edo Madara with Rinnegan. And you're right. I mean, Naruto cuts Jubidara in half with a Lava Rasen Shuriken. And if it weren't for Kaguya stepping in, Naruto and Sasuke probably would have defeated 3 Rinnegan Madara, as Naruto was able to cut down dozens of the meteors that 3 Rinnegan Madara created and threw down at them. However, it's important to note here that Naruto is being helped by Sasuke in this entire fight. And I'm not saying, oh, Naruto's being carried. No, but what I am saying is Sasuke is doing at least half the pressuring and half the damage and half the defense. I mean, Naruto and Sasuke Sasuke are written as equal in strength heading into this battle against Madara and Kaguya. So having assistance from somebody who's equally as strong as you is a pretty big asset. However, Hashirama battled it out against Madara by himself, and he was able to defeat a stronger version of Madara than he ever fought while he was alive, while being brought back as a weaker version of himself. And therefore, does Naruto surpass Hashirama in strength the second he gets Sage of Six Paths Chakra? I mean, like, maybe? But if we're assuming that Hokage Hashirama is stronger than the Hashirama we saw in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, which most people do, I think Sage of Six Paths mode Naruto versus Hokage Hashirama would be a pretty good fight. Especially when you consider the fact that Hashirama has a kit that is specifically designed to fight against Jinchuriki or tailed beasts. Now, by the last, Naruto absolutely trounces any iteration of Hashirama. But I'm just saying, I'd like to see the fight between Hokage Hashirama and Sage of Six Paths mode Naruto. But what do you guys think? When do you think Naruto surpasses each and every single one of the Hokage? Let me know in the comments below. And while it goes down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, the puppies are asleep, and I finally have a moment to work out.